Hi, my name is Paul Kiem. I'm from New South Wales History Teachers Association. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the Extension History and preparing for the essay question 1 in the Extension History paper. And the very first thing I'd like to suggest to you is what not to do when you are preparing for this paper. So this is what I think you should not do. You should not go in with a prepared response that looks a little bit like this, where we're starting out with Herodotus, who's the father of history, and we're going to the Vulnerable Bede, and then von Ranke, and then someone like Henry Reynolds, or someone more contemporary, and that's the end of our response. And all we've done is lined up a couple of historians, a bit of material about their biography, and a fairly narrative descriptive approach. That's not what we're looking for in that question. In fact, I'd go to an excellent book put out by the Board of Studies a number of years ago, and it suggests that when you are constructing a response to question 1, it's imperative that it relates to both the source and the question asked. And that's not going to happen if you take in a prepared response that reflects a narrative or biographical approach. Further, it's suggesting that you should be aiming at using a variety of sources, including a range of contemporary, traditional and popular sources. Now, if we just get rid of the historians for a moment, what that might look like if I'm going into the exam and I'm preparing by taking in some major talking points, then this might be part of my take-in talking points. So I'm prepared to talk about a number of things that are fairly traditional in a historiography course, such as is history science or literature? When we look at history, should it be structured as a narrative or in some other way? Methodology, historians' methodology, how do they go about their work? School of thought in history, then our school, early 20th century, and then perhaps a later 20th century issue, postmodernism, and what it has to say about history. Or another group of talking points we could have, fairly contemporary issues, fairly contemporary debates. Anzac, we're having a centenary of Anzac, we're in the middle of it now in 2016, and there's all sorts of discussion out there in the community about Anzac. Is history meant to be academic, or is it a much broader thing than that? Public history versus academic history, another major area of discussion. The democratisation of history. Who can write history, and who do we write history about? Who produces history, and what's the subject matter of history? It's absolutely broadened, and we talk about the democratising of history. And I suppose a mechanism for the democratisation of history is the digital revolution. And if you want to know a little bit more about the digital revolution, I'd be very happy to refer you to an article that I produced in December 2015 issue of Teaching History on the digital revolution and its impact on history. But any of those talking points you could develop if they were relevant once you've read the source and the question. Other example of taking talking points, recent books or articles that you might have read. So one from a number of years ago, is history fiction? I think is an excellent reference. Is history fiction indeed could be a sub-theme for what our course is about. The next one I'm talking about, history anxiety, and I'm referring there to an article or a chapter by Mark McKenna in the Cambridge History of Australia, published in 2013. Excellent discussion that's very relevant to a lot of the things we talk about in extension history. And the final reference I've got there in 2016, it's published this year, Private Lives and Public History, a book written by Anna Clark, is dealing in that area of public history, academic history, commemoration and so on, and is very up to date and very relevant to any number of things that could be used as a talking point in an extension question. And finally, and I've only got one example here because this is where I think you need to find current examples that are very now. I'm talking about here things that might come off television, might come off Twitter, might come off blogs and so on, that are about history and that are coming from our very contemporary world. The example that I have got here, tweet non-Irish, is something I picked up off Twitter. And it's about a high school student in the United States who challenged an American academic. The academic was saying that no Irish need apply signs did not exist. They were an urban myth. Now, no Irish need apply for a job, for accommodation in American history, that this form of discrimination did not exist. The student was able to demonstrate that it did exist. She was able to challenge the professor, and she was able to do this, interestingly, because she had done her own research with digitised newspapers. Now, that is an example of a great talking point, because it certainly helps to illustrate the democratisation of history. A schoolgirl can challenge a professor. The impact of the digital revolution, she's able to do her research via the digital revolution, via the internet with digitised papers, and the fact that it's been publicised through Twitter. So a perfect example, and I would be suggesting that you are on the lookout all the time for your own. Now, if we're doing a course in historiography, historians are not irrelevant. They're very, very relevant. So let's bring our historians back into the picture, because they could fit in any way to any discussion. But what I would suggest is two things. One, that the focus is not just on historians, it must also be on all these other aspects, themes, debates, contemporary issues. And finally, and I think this is the most important point, that we absolutely don't go into the exam with prepared responses. In other words, we have our talking points, but they're not joined up. We don't join them up because we don't know what we're going to talk about until we see the question and the source. And we want to be able to pick and choose what's relevant and integrate our talking points with talking points that arrive from the question and the source. So what we need to have is a bunch of stuff to talk about. And we keep that in our extension box, ready to take into the exam. Now, I should point out, I am speaking figuratively here. We wouldn't be taking a box of blocks with stuff written on them into the exam. We would be doing that in our head. Now, if we want to do a little bit more on this, can I suggest you have a look, or ask your teachers to keep an eye out for the June 2016 issue of Teaching History, where there'll be a short article on this with an essay to practice and a little exercise to go through that helps to develop the points we've been discussing here.